Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Helen Redfern, also known on Instagram as Helen Redfern Writer, formerly a bookish baker, and this video is all about how I use Instagram as a writer, and it's actually part 2. My previous video was all about how I use the main Instagram feed, and I will link that in the description box below. This video is all about how I use Instagram stories. I love Instagram stories. I was dabbling a little bit with Snapchat quite a little while ago, and then Instagram launched Instagram stories, and I was one of those that immediately started trying it. And I enjoyed Snapchat, but I was struggling with growing an audience. Maybe I'm the wrong age demographic, I don't know. But Instagram stories was great because I already had the audience. I didn't need to worry about building that up. I could communicate immediately with the people that followed me. I think initially not many people watched the stories, but as time has gone on, more and more people watch stories. And something I've found in particular, because my engagement is decreasing on the main Instagram feed, sometimes my Instagram stories can reach far more people, and I will get far more views on my stories than I do on a photograph on my grid. So yes, I do like Instagram stories. I like the creativity. I like to experiment with it. I like to chat to my audience. I like to develop ideas in my head. I like to play around with slow-mo or time-lapse. And I just find it a really nice creative way of communicating. These are the ways that I use Instagram stories as a writer, and number one is to share my daily stories, aspects of my life that I'm comfortable with putting online. And in the past I have shared morning routines with my chickens and my ducks. Sadly, my ducks and most of my chickens are no longer with us, but it was like a recurring motif. I would go outside in the morning and release the ducks from their duck house, and out they would run, overjoyed to start a brand new day. And it was the same every day, and the only thing that was different was the seasons and the weather. People adored them. It was very sad when the fox came, but it was a great way for me to start the day, and I think a lot of other people enjoyed it as a way to start their day too. But the other things that I share stories about are my dogs, my cat, aspects around my writing day and what I'm working on, or bigger projects such as when I did a massive office tidy. And I've even saved that on my highlights on my Instagram stories, because during that office tidy, I think I've called it office hinch on my stories, I shared books that I enjoyed and didn't want to throw out. I shared books that I'd appeared in, and it was a way of talking more about me and my writing life, as well as a nice, because I know people like to see before and afters of tidying or decorating or whatever. So yeah, it's little projects like that. And I also share what I'm cooking or baking too. And recently I did a story from beginning to end of making scones. So it was a story where I shared the ingredients, the recipe, and how I was doing it. I experimented with different ways. I had some static photographs, I had video, sometimes I used sound, sometimes I didn't, used boomerangs, and I generally had fun doing it. And then the final result, the scones or the scones, I took a photograph of and put that on my main Instagram feed. And it was also a way to attract people to my blog where I had the recipe there. That wasn't the primary reason, but it's just an example of how you can do things on Instagram stories to attract attention elsewhere with a blog or with a YouTube video or something like that. The second way I use Instagram stories as a writer is to share creative behind the scenes, and people are genuinely interested in how I put together my different projects. So whether it's creating a YouTube video, so today I shared a picture of my tripod here in front of me because I know quite a few people who follow me are also interested in starting on YouTube, and I get lots of questions about the tripod setup and the camera, so I shared that behind the scenes. And it also alerts people to the fact that there will be video coming up very soon and to look out for that. But I also share aspects of my writing, so I will talk about if I'm writing an essay or if I'm working on my novel, and I will share pictures of my desk or screenshots of some words that I've written even, and also my notebooks. I share pictures of my notebooks and how I'm structuring my day with my to-do list, or how I'm structuring my month. And I put all these different things on Instagram stories to give people an insight into the behind the scenes of a writer. Thirdly, the third way that I use Instagram stories as a writer is to communicate with my audience. So it's not just me putting or pushing things out there, it's a two-way dialogue, two-way conversation, and it can be really lonely often when I am at home on my own. I've got the 2 dogs for company, obviously, but it's not the same as having a 5-minute chat with somebody that you know. And I just love having that communication through direct messages when I put something on there that other people can relate to, or it's reassuring because you know somebody else is going through the same thing. Oftentimes you find other people have similar frustrations. I know I've talked in the past about losing followers on Instagram, and I mentioned this might be because I changed my name from A Bookish Baker to Helen Redfern Writer. That could be one of the reasons. It could be because I don't share pictures of my ducks anymore in my stories. It could be Instagram sorting out bots, or it could just be that they don't relate to me anymore. Either of these reasons are fine, but it's a little bit crushing sometimes when you see how you've grown your online presence to see it sort of going down in front of your eyes. And then, so I mentioned that on Instagram stories, and I had some lovely responses and also some great advice in terms of when I changed my name from A Bookish Baker to Helen Redfern Writer, and to keep the A Bookish Baker name, although I don't use it, so other people can't sort of take it. Lots of great advice, and I think I've written a blog post about that, which I will link below, because I think it's really kind of useful advice, and that's all part of having this two-way dialogue. The fourth way that I use Instagram stories as a writer is to work things out in my head. And sometimes, for example, let me give you a for example. I write essays on Patreon, and I'm currently writing my 5th essay, and this is all about online creativity and being a writer online. And sometimes I have an idea of what I want to write about, but I don't quite understand how I feel about a certain point. And actually, I think the best way of explaining this, I'm going to now put up an Instagram story where I talk about this. What I found interesting in this essay process this time round is how Instagram stories has been really useful for me in terms of clarifying some of my thoughts. So I'm actually using social media to work out what it is I want to write. Does that make sense? Okay, so you get the idea now. So basically, I use Instagram stories as a sounding board for my ideas and as a way of unraveling what is going on in my head. And it's pretty much the same as using a journal, I guess, in that you start writing in order to make sense of your ideas. And that is the same as using Instagram stories sometimes for me. So finally, number 5, how I use Instagram stories as a writer is to share. And that could be the most obvious in terms of sharing my own blog posts, sharing these YouTube videos, sharing my Patreon account, or the fact that I do coaching, online email coaching for other bloggers and creatives. However, I don't use it as a big salesy thing, because I also like to share books that I'm reading, or films that I'm watching, or TV programs, and I kind of got this honest, cozy brand going with my Instagram. So I like to share cozy books. I like to share cozy films. So people know, I mean, if I suddenly put up a horror story, people will be a bit shocked because that's not what I'm about. But if other people recommend books, other people recommend films, I'll also put them on there. But also I talk about other people's blog posts. If I think somebody's just written a blog post that fits in with the kind of things my audience enjoys and things that I enjoy, then I will share that as well. What I tend to do, I don't just put one story up on its own. I will put a minimum of 3, because I look at Instagram stories as a story. So you've got a beginning, a middle and an end. And if you have 3 stories, you've got your beginning, middle and your end. And that's not a rule, by the way. That's kind of just the way I look at Instagram stories. It is a story. And I know that some people will just put up one story and that's it. But I find if you make a story out of your Instagram stories, if you give it a kind of narrative arc with your beginning, your middle and your end, you're going to get then more engagement and more interest in what you're doing, and also spacing out different stories over the course of the day. So you know, you've always got somebody in your Instagram, you've got your Instagram stories across the top. If you do fresh Instagram stories maybe 2 or 3 times a day, you're then going to appear back at the beginning and then more people will see you. So for example, for me, I might do a morning story talking about what I'm going to do that day. I might do one around lunchtime, and then maybe I'll do one towards the end of the afternoon, or one in the evening when I'm talking about what I'm reading at night. But I tend to do a morning one and a kind of mid-morning lunchtime one, all coinciding with my breaks from my writing, incidentally. And that means A, you're not on Instagram all the time, but also B, you are refreshing your stories so that you're appearing back at the beginning of people's page. So when they go into the Instagram app, there you are, possibly one of the front people on their Instagram stories reel. That's how I use Instagram stories as a writer. I really enjoy it. I think that shows as well. I like to experiment with, like I say, with the time lapse, with the slow-mo, with portrait photography, all using the different functions on my mobile. I also like to use the different filters as well. It's just generally having a bit of fun with it, communicating with my audience, sharing information or entertaining them, and just enjoying it and having those conversations and getting to know people. If you're looking to sell your books, or if you're looking to promote your writing, it's a great way to start a community online. If you have any questions, come over to Instagram, send me a DM or put a comment below, and I would love to answer for you. And if you use any of the advice I've given you, then don't forget to tag me in on Instagram stories so that I can come over and have a look. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon for another video. Bye for now. Bye.